The Establishment Networks and the new Bob Woodward book. It's crazy time again. Ahead on this edition of The Uprising. LibertyNation.com. They're the resistance, but we are the uprising. With Scott Cosenza and Tim Donner.
There's not going to be a President Donald Trump.
Hey, a president! Can you believe it?
I love the poorly educated.
The voters have guaranteed themselves slavery, economic disaster.
I can't believe I'm losing to this guy.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
I have never met with Russians.
Our elected representatives can abuse subordinates and then secretly use a slush fund of our money to pay them off.
The media resorts to personal attacks without any content other than to incite anger.
Hello, Uprising fans. Lisa K. Donner, editor-in-chief of LibertyNation.com, here with my pal Scott Cosenza, our resident legal affairs editor, who badly needs a good night's sleep after covering the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings gavel to gavel. Welcome, Scott. Are you appropriately caffeinated for the next few minutes?
Yes, I am.
All right. That means
for at least a few minutes, I think.
You're awake and alert.
I'm running on caffeine almost exclusively at this point.
All right. Ready to go.
And some Wendy's.
Do we take a just a little caveat here and tell them you're about to run out the door to a very important event?
We're recording early uprising this week so that I may attend the homecoming of the world champion Philadelphia Eagles as they re-enter Lincoln Financial Field for the home opener.
Congratulations to all you
Exactly.
Philadelphia people. Why are they doing it in the middle of the week?
This is what I've been screaming from the rooftops for a long time. It's a revenue thing. So they started, obviously football was Sundays, right? They own the TV revenue. Monday night football was a huge win for them money-wise. Well, add another weeknight, right? Why not? So they've diluted the brand, unfortunately, and they've frustrated people. Woe is me, right? I know it's a tough problem to have, but it is a lot of trouble to try to get to a weeknight. Even if you live in the same city, it's a lot of trouble, Get the kids, do whatever, work, and then get over there. So, and not to mention the fact that you're going to be in bed by, 2 a.m. or whatever. So, anyway, another misstep, I think, by the NFL there. If this were Sunday, it would be better. But in any case, go Eagles.
Well, let me just say I'm a Steel Town girl and a Steelers fan, so I'm jealous. And congratulations to all you people in the city of brotherly love. Well, Scott, this week I thought maybe our listeners might have Kavanaugh confirmation exhaustion, and we could change it up a little bit. Now, this week there was a preview of the Watergate famed Bob Woodward's book, Fear, Trump in the White House. That's what it's called. Anyway, it's being hawked on every establishment network like it's War and Peace. Or maybe they're getting a cut of the proceeds. I mean, I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, their cut is that they get to say things that are bad about Donald Trump in a new, refreshing way. So that's their juice.
Well, that's funny because I was going to say this is a new opportunity for them to trash Trump. So the networks naturally pounced. According to, I think it was MRC, Media Research, Center, they do studies on these things, and they said that ABC, CBS, and NBC racked up over 13 minutes of nightly news coverage on the Bob Woodward book. So we have some clips of each of the networks talking, and I'm going to ask you, this is a test. What is the one word that they keep saying over and over again?
Okay.
All right, so we're going to
start.
Guess.
All right. Well, it's not collusion this time. Hold on, let me think about it.
Oh, you're going to do it before we even do the clip?
I want to try, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I want to.
Okay, that's impressive. All right.
Well, I don't know that I'm going to be successful, but it would have been collusion. I'm going to guess that it is some allusion to Trump's mental state in a derogatory fashion, like
all right.
Unstable or something like that.
Okay, that's an interesting tack.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to start with ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
In the meantime, next this Tuesday evening to another storm swirling tonight, this time the explosive new book about President Trump and the White House. It's called Fear, and in it, author Bob Woodward revealing for the first time that the president reportedly took part in a practice drill for a possible interview with the special counsel. Woodward reports his lawyers were so concerned they made their case to Robert Mueller themselves.
Stop the clip. Is it going to be concerned?
No,
Oh, okay. All right,
no, but he did say it.
That's a good one. People are
saying
concerned.
the president should not be questioned. Well, tonight here, the president and his team are now denying what's being reported in this new and explosive book.
All right, did you hear it?
Well,
Did you hear it twice? You were not listening closely.
I was
You're
trying
still
to.
thinking about the
You're
Eagles.
right. No, I'm thinking about Kavanaugh's confirmation, actually. It's
Okay.
been, that's going to be a month before that gets out of my brain.
He said it twice.
Uh-huh.
It starts with an E. Okay, let me just play
Go
the
ahead.
first line one more time for you.
In the meantime, next this Tuesday evening to another storm swirling tonight, this time the explosive new book
it's
about President Trump and the
explosive.
White
I
House. It's
see.
called
Well, whoever Simon & Schuster got to press that, talking points, they did an excellent job. When you see that cross-platform, everybody laying out the same language, that's a very good job by the publicist.
Yeah, this is an incendiary book. It's explosive.
Right.
It's an IED.
Well, it says bad things about Donald Trump, so
Yeah, waiting
it must
to
be all
go
those
off.
things.
Okay, so the amazing thing is that these all sound so very similar. Like, you're right, it's branding. They almost use the same language. So next we're going to go to a cut from CBS Evening News with Jeff Glor.
The Tiffany Network.
Yes.
The latest book on the Trump White House paints an ugly picture of the current presidency. Bob Woodward, who's reporting helped bring down President Richard Nixon, said
Oh, that was a nice little caveat in there. Whose reporting helped bring down President Richard Nixon. Let's just hope he can bring down President Trump. I mean, don't you sort of hear that?
You hear it all day long, every day. The idea, again, that there's no evidence that Donald Trump had anything to do with any kind of illegal election activity concerning Russia. Yes, you can debate whether or not his paying off a whore to keep her mouth shut was some kind of an election violation, and technically it may be, but that's not what was sold to the American people. That Donald Trump was basically a traitor is what was sold to the American people, and we haven't seen one jot or tittle of evidence. And they could just keep going on all along with this. Bob Woodward's writing about Trump, and he helped bring down Nixon. So there's a lot of talk about Nixon. The Nixon case, matter of fact, at the Kavanaugh hearings on day 2 yesterday. And, they just try to keep it up in the air, right? Like, he's a disgraced president. They don't talk about, of course, Clinton's impeachment and the disgrace of him. I was curious, so you talked to me yesterday about the Kaczynski connection to the Kavanaugh hearings. And this is about Judge Kaczynski, who is a now retired and some might say disgraced former federal judge. I don't know that he's part of this. He basically sent a bunch of naughty pictures and sent some harassing sexual stuff to some of his young women clerks.
Circuit? Where is he?
Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Oh, okay.
And former chief judge of that circuit. And he is a hero to many people who think like I do about the law. For libertarian legal types, he's a real hero. So, it's not cool that he sexually harassed some ladies, but it doesn't change his jurisprudence, to be sure.
Are we, has he been convicted of sexual
He wasn't charged with a crime. It was part of the Me Too, when just every day you'd read about a new person who women were saying, this guy's a
All right,
creep.
I just don't like to say somebody did something.
Yeah,
when
well, I think I don't know that he's presented a robust defense of himself. Not that he needs to, but there are serious women who are, this is not some random Twitter person. These are serious women who are highly respected attorneys who clerked for the judge who said that he, did things that he shouldn't have done.
Okay.
So,
all right. So
I think we take them at their word,
Right.
But they tried to loop in, they bring it up just to throw all this stuff in the air. So if you talk about Nixon and Judge Kaczynski and Me Too, like what other stuff can we pile on
Connect him to
Judge Kavanaugh
really
to?
bad
Like he has something
stuff.
to do with it. And as a matter of fact, I have to say it just because it's funny because you told me about it, which was you said, you had I don't know if it's a tip, but a talk with somebody who thought, hey, this is where they're going to try to attack him from this Kaczynski angle. And it's hilarious because he was Kaczynski's law clerk. Now, the position to a law clerk, to a federal appellate judge is the position of a slave to a master. Literally, they do whatever they say whenever they say it. And Kaczynski actually is known. In fact, there was, I think, a Vanity Fair piece published about Kaczynski like a decade ago about how he treated his clerks. Not in a sexual way, but in a way of like, you get a phone call at 2 a.m. to answer a legal question, and you got off work at 11 p.m. Like, you got to get up and do it. He just works them to death. That's sort of how it works. So anyway, well, Kavanaugh was Kaczynski's law clerk in D.C. Kaczynski was in Sacramento or San Bernardino or some California city anyway, so they had a virtual work relationship.
Yeah.
And he was just one of Kaczynski's clerks. And then they bring it up like, well, did you say anything about Judge Kaczynski? Lisa, did you say anything about Judge Kaczynski's harassing behavior?
This is what I tweeted.
No, you didn't? Did you report it to anyone?
Okay, this is what I texted
wait a second.
you this morning.
Why didn't you report it, Lisa? Oh, because, you say, well, I had no idea. Oh, so you didn't say anything? Didn't know it? Didn't see anything? Didn't say anything? Okay.
Exactly.
Next question.
Exactly.
Right?
That's what I texted you this morning. I'm like, why didn't you report it? And I was actually mimicking what they asked him, and you said, "Oh, I can't make my story that long."
Well, I actually added a section.
Okay,
that was the extra hour, by the way.
Right, I was just quoting the.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
so they do this thing. This is a thing that happens in these Senate hearings that would never happen in a real courtroom. And when I was a kid, I used to watch I don't know if it was Divorce Court or the People's Court or one of these court shows, and here's how it would work. It would be like, I would say. So, Lisa, did you murder somebody last night on 14th and K Street in Washington, D.C. with this pen or this knife and then run away in your car? And you're looking at like, well, no, I didn't. Well, I just laid out all that stuff, right? So if I was an actual juror, I would think, wow, she must be. Even if you're denial, it doesn't mean anything. And that would never actually happen in a real courtroom due to what's called a lack of foundation. I would have to build a foundation in order to build up to that thing. I can't just present wild theories for no reason. But I can if I'm a U.S. Senator, okay, and I'm examining you to be the next Supreme Court Justice of the United States. I can say something like, so you've never hired a black person then, is that right? Uh-huh. And racist, just these kind of things that don't really make a point. Not that we need it to have the rules of evidence like a court of law with that level of formality, because it can be stifling for this kind of an examination. But all this is Kamala Harris, making hay for the cameras.
Okay. All right. So are we the takeaway is that you became an attorney because you watched Divorce Court.
Right.
All right. Back to CBS.
Says Chief of Staff John Kelly said we're in crazy town. Woodward says top aides were said to steal papers off the president's desk so he couldn't end trade deals. Mr. Trump quickly responded, telling the Daily Caller, quote, "It's just another bad book. He's had a lot of credibility problems."
Okay, this is where I start to think, and please do not think I am a conspiracy nut, but between CBS and what we're also about to hear, I'm thinking about the New York Times report that came out with an anonymous source that said...
Hold on. It wasn't a New York Times report with an anonymous source.
It was an op-ed.
Which makes it... We could talk about why that's way more scandalous.
Right. It was an op-ed. Okay, but here they've got people saying this is crazy town. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the anonymous op-ed saying this is crazy town. And
well, that's what I said, right? About his mental health state.
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Here's one thing that I think that I don't know that they've thought about, which is this stealing papers off the desk. That may very well be a federal felony.
Right.
So while it's not a federal felony to leak political chatter or non-classified material, it is probably. I mean, I haven't actually looked into the federal law on this.
Jeff Sessions is going to
well, actually, you know what? I think this is a hook that actually could be used to investigate them criminally. I mean, it really is. If you think about the...
Yeah, the implications of that. Right.
You are stealing a piece of paper off the desk of the President of the United States? Right. I mean, that's... By the way, not just take... I mean, you could say you stole it if you grabbed a piece of paper to jot something down. You took it without permission. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about to deny the people their governance. I mean, like it or not, that this is who we've got, and you can't take it upon yourself to be the king of the world and decide what he's going to,
All right. Do you want to go on record as saying that they are they're going to start an investigation into this into the White House? Are they going to start an investigation into who this anonymous op-eder is?
One thing that we know for sure, Lisa, is that for brutality and intolerance to the speech of insiders, Donald Trump is no Barack Obama. So Obama certainly would have. He's the one who's thrown reporters in jail. And I say it every time I can because I think that while President Trump unacceptably demonizes the press in his speech, in his actions, he has done nothing remotely approaching the disgusting behavior of Barack Hussein Obama and his attacks on the free press in this country. So, I don't know.
Didn't they illegally wiretap James Rosen from Fox?
Well, they invaded Cheryl Atkinson's computer.
Right.
They should be. Nobody is in prison because of that. It just shows you who's running the empire. I would say to you that. So you asked me a question. It's still on the floor, and I would say to you that. I don't know. It's one of those things that will allow the people who, are in the legacy media kind of paint Trump as a sort of unhinged, like looking for leakers thing. So that's bad news for him. Is there a capable kind of organization that will actually quickly and robustly look into that? I don't know that we even have that.
All right. I just wanted to put out on the table that I think between the networks with this Woodward book and the op-ed today in the New York Times, I think we could be looking at a coordinated attack against the president.
Well, don't think it. I mean, it's certainly coordinated. That's what they're doing. It's been a coordinated attack. I mean, you say coordinated attack and say, don't think I'm a conspiracy nut, because you are right now thinking that the only way that can happen is if it's some kind of like, let's meet at the top of the bar and we'll discuss our thing. It doesn't have to be like that to be coordinated. If I see you post something
at the old
right,
Ebbets Grill.
Yeah, at the Post Pub. If you post something, right, that I can tell that you're trying to kind of like lay out this narrative, and then I see somebody else post it, and I'm part of that universe, I don't need to have a phone call or a text with you.
Right.
The text maybe could just be, hey, check out my latest piece. You know what I mean? And then I go, and then the other, and it doesn't even, it's more like a hive kind of mentality rather than a top down.
Yeah,
sort
also
of,
known as the boys on the bus. Yeah, everybody groupthink.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't leave out Lester Holt.
Well, let me just interrupt and say this
NBC.
Before you go on. The other thing that happens, and we ran into this the other day with a story that you wrote, one person writes something, okay, and then everybody else is writing about that. If the other person is first and for a major publication, people copy that publication. And if that publication has an error in it, remember the law firm situation? If that publication has an error in it, it's repeated on down the line because there's not independent fact-checking done often.
Right, so. Exactly. Okay, here we go with Lester Holt.
Let's turn now to that explosive new book from legendary Washington Post journalist Bob Woodward. He knows a thing or two.
Did you hear it?
Legendary.
The E word. No.
It's explosive, right?
The E word. Explosive new book. Okay.
About reporting on White Houses, past and present. And his latest is already sending shockwaves far beyond Washington. It paints a portrait of a White House deeply alarmed by the boss's behavior.
Okay, this is, again, a meme right out of the New York Times op-ed, which said the people inside are trying to keep this country together because the president is such a fruit ball.
Yeah, they're basically dealing with an unhinged kind of person, and they're the real heroes who are working to keep it all together with some spit and tape.
Right, but it's the same narrative, only a different vehicle. New York Times has their op-ed. Bob Woodward has his explosive book, right? But it's the same narrative, exactly.
The other thing that we can't underestimate, too, is the desire for, on the sort of left and leftward, that, it sells, right? It gets clicks, I'm sure. So if you write about, how there is no collusion, I bet you that doesn't click as well as, explosive, by legendary, Watergate. That's all. I mean, hey, look, talk about Watergate, right? We know that Watergate sells clicks, right? Because when the podcast had the title of Watergate in it, we got a lot more clicks.
Yeah,
so,
it's absolutely true. But the president this week has said a couple of times that he thinks NBC is even worse than CNN. And I actually think he may have something there. But that's why I chose this next clip, which is NBC's reporter, and this is like a little package.
All right, before you do that.
Her name is Kristen Welker.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So Lisa and I listen somewhat regularly to the No Agenda podcast.
Oh, I love
and so he's the one who said it first.
Shout out to No Agenda.
Yeah.
We love you.
I think it was Dvorak who said first that kind of laid it out that you wait and see by the end of Trump's presidency, NBC will be destroyed. And it's because they're the ones that had the infamous pussy tape that they gave it to.
Really?
And they didn't report on it.
No, I didn't hear
and
this.
they didn't report on it themselves, you have to remember. This is the Inside Edition tape. They gave it away. They gave it, I think, to the Times or whoever. They gave it to CNN, I think. So they didn't even. So it was the NBC executives that Dvorak said. He laid it out, and I think he's right that Trump is gunning for them. So it doesn't surprise me to hear him say they're even worse. So anyway, please go ahead with your clip.
All right, Kristen with a K, Welker.
In his explosive new book, Bob Woodward.
There it is. The E word, explosive.
Describes the Trump presidency in the midst of a nervous breakdown. Excerpts first obtained by the Washington.
Okay, that's the meme you were coming up with right at the beginning.
Second time too, by the way.
Right,
so it's part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
He's a nut job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Washington Post, quote, aides calling it crazy town, at times paralyzed by the Russia investigation and that possible interview with Robert Mueller.
So, by the way, Crazy Town, right there. That's another of the mental health that adds to it. Yeah, it's I agree with you. It's a coordinated. Whether I don't think it's necessarily organized, coordinated, but loosely coordinated, of course.
Well, meantime, this week, the president. I don't know how he's getting anything done because he's getting.
So stop right there. If you don't want the president to get anything done in a week, right, or do whatever. So when I saw this story. Of course, initially I was just kind of thinking, but like 10 minutes later, I was like, okay.
The New York Times story you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about the anonymous op-ed published in the New York Times. And so just for people who don't have this on the brain, anonymous sourcing is done very regularly in journalism, but not anonymous opinion pieces. Okay, this is like a personal. The point of an op-ed or an opinion editorial is that it's an editorial position. But a personal opinion
by the
person, right? Always signed by the person. Or a board, perhaps, but individuals.
You make the point. It has to have a byline.
It's crazy that it doesn't have a byline.
Op-ed by anonymous. That's bizarre.
Yeah, and
I wonder if this has ever been done before.
There was an interesting tweet by a New York Times reporter. I'm sorry, I can't name her. Who said? Now she's a reporter, not on the editorial staff, and she says, "So does this prohibition on this is now news? I want to go out." And find out who anonymous is.
Right.
Does this grant? Does this grant of anonymity exist system wide in the New York Times and its networks? It was kind of interesting. And as it turns out, by the way, I think it was the managing editor or somebody said, no, it doesn't. In other words, have at it. Now, whether they'll actually print it if she discovers that name.
Yeah, right.
Matter of fact, I saw this when I didn't actually do the research because I was neck deep in the Supreme Court stuff, but actually overhead. But the writer for that piece, and I'm sorry, I actually got off track with why I first started mentioning it, but I want to just go ahead with this line, which is that he uses the word, and we know that it's a he because the New York Times, in a tweet referencing the anonymous piece, said he when referring to the author.
Sweet.
So it's a male.
Okay.
And the author used the word lodestar in a sentence. I don't have my dictionary handy, but lodestar or guiding star or North Star type of thing is how. But that is not a common word in common usage.
No, you can see if he's...
I have read the word lodestar before. I can tell you that I like words. I've never used the word lodestar. It's not part of my vocabulary. But when I read it, I was like, who the hell says lodestar like that?
Yeah, maybe you can go through a bunch of tweets.
It's been done. You know who the only... look, I paid attention to this story tangentially, but so far there's only one Trump official, administration official, that has used the word lodestar in a Nexus searchable.
Who?
Pence.
Oh, come on.
I ain't saying he's the guy who wrote the piece. I'm saying, now maybe if you're clever, if you're really clever, and you don't use the word lodestar.
Oh, you try to point it towards somebody else.
Or just something for cover. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, well, I thought we were really onto something there. But anyway, Thank you very much. We are out of time. You have been listening to The Uprising.
Every week, Scott, Tim, and Lisa fire back at the leftist media, the loony liberals, and all the fake news that makes your blood boil. The Uprising podcast from LibertyNation.com rises up against all the crazies with our special sauce of truth, facts, fresh insight, and fun.